You're listening to Stephen Mack's Classic Movie Podcast on iTunes, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, YouTube, and on OneMusic.pro.
How are you doing? It's Stephen McDermott here again. You're on to episode 5 of Stephen Mack's Classic Movie Podcast, and a lot of requests for this particular podcast with the advent of the new It remake, which has recently been in the cinemas, which I have gone to see, and I have to say, unbelievably good. Very, very good reimagining. But we're going to go back 27 years to 1990 and the original It, starring the wonderful Tim Curry. Now, the original It, obviously coming from the book written by Stephen King, which is well over 1,000 pages long, and it's a very heavyweight novel, but well worth a read. The actual TV series itself, it was in a bit of development hell. They were deciding were they going to release it as a movie, were they going to release it as a TV series, and they ended up doing it as a TV miniseries, basically parts 1 and part 2, and it was very well done. It was released afterwards on videocassette VHS, for those of you who remember VHS, and released later as on VHS as a wonderful 3-hour, I suppose you could call it a ride of terror. Now, the titular character in this is played by Tim Curry, and he plays it with such venom and such malice. It's a wonderful... It's not a wonderful thing if you're afraid of clowns. Let me put it to you like that, because he terrified people. He absolutely terrified people with his clown makeup and the way he acted and the way he inhabited the character of Pennywise the Dancing Clown. So to give you a brief outline, if you haven't seen the new one or even the old one, we'll give you a brief outline basically of the plot of the movie. We're going back. The movie starts off in 1960 and we see 7 young children, the Lucky 7 as they call themselves. And they basically fight and overcome an evil clown, it's a demon really, that poses as a clown that kills children. And we see, and the movie flits back and forth right throughout, but it's basically in 2 parts. In the 1960s, when the kids first come upon the character of Pennywise the Dancing Clown, and then we see them later on as adults when we realise that it's been 27 years and he's coming back for more. And there's so many young actors in it at the time when the movie was done, and some wonderful actors portraying both the kids and the adults as well. So we had the likes of Annette O'Toole, who played the older Beverly Marsh, also Jonathan Brandis, who played young Bill Denborough, and Richard Thomas, who played older Bill Denborough. Now, for those of you who don't know who Richard Thomas is, he is, of course, he was, what was his name in The Waltons? Was he Jim Bob or... one of them, I don't know. Tim Curry obviously played Pennywise, the dancing clown, and it was just an amazing piece of filmmaking and a really kind of a faithful enough adaptation. Now, for those of you who haven't read the book or are familiar with the book deals with an awful lot more than what we see, because what you have to remember is that the movie, when it was released as a TV miniseries, it was going on to major US networks, which meant that a lot of what Stephen King actually wrote about in the book couldn't make it onto the TV series because it was of too adult a nature. Even the initial killing of Georgie, Bill's younger brother, we see that at the very, very start, as we do in the new one. But the new one obviously is an awful lot more graphic, and the book itself goes into details on the death of Georgie. But what we just see is basically Georgie and Georgie's no more. But it's a wonderful 3-hour movie, and the thing about it is you don't actually feel it pass. Now, some people have complained that the second half, dealing with the adults as they come back to fight Pennywise again, it's a little bit slower. The children's one set back in the 60s is absolutely wonderful, and it is. Part 2 is a little bit weaker than part 1, but as a movie, as a whole, it is a wonderful, wonderful movie, and Tim Curry gives just a blistering performance as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. He really, really does. It's scary. It's everything that you imagined a scary clown would be. And obviously Stephen King at the minute is quite hot. We've got It currently in cinemas, well worth a view. But what we've also got is we've got Gerald's Game, which is happening on Netflix at the minute, 1922. Both of them novellas by Stephen King. And there is talks now that the iconic Pet Sematary is going to be remade and updated as well. And judging by the job that they've done on the current It, you could say it's a, the future's looking bright for Stephen King books. Now, the thing about it is, as well, within the movie, we see a lot of different relationships. And again, the relationship between Beverly and her father, which we know is strained. The relationship as well between Eddie Kasparak and his mother. Eddie's a bit of his mother's more of a... worried about Eddie. She's worried about, is he going to get sick, and, is everything going to be okay? Is he going to catch his cold? So it deals with an awful lot of relationships right throughout the movie. Now, on the DVD commentary track, if you ever get an opportunity to listen to it, the actors, both child and adult, said that Tim Curry's characterisation of Pennywise was so creepy that literally everyone avoided him during filming. Now, he was initially reluctant to take the role of Pennywise because he didn't relish the thought of being buried under so much makeup. And now if you remember, Tim Curry played Darkness, the character of Darkness in Legend, which is also famous for being Tom Cruise's first big starring movie role back in 1985. But he went through it, and what we got is probably one of the most iconic killer clowns of all time. To get the effect of it moving through the pipework, because we hear about the deadlights a lot in the original TV miniseries. We don't hear so much about them in the new reimagining version. And I'm doing what I said I wouldn't do. I'm comparing two movies. And I said I wouldn't do it. But, it's very kind of hard not to do it right now. In the TV miniseries and in the book, you hear an awful lot more about the deadlights, and the deadlights hypnotise you, and they kind of basically take you away. And in the original movie, they just basically moved a lamp through some lights or through some pipes to get the effect of the deadlights. There was also some interesting. Michael Cole, who played Henry Bowers. Now, Henry Bowers was the kid bully, didn't achieve much, and as we see him later on in life in the movie, he's locked up in a mental asylum after his first encounter with Pennywise the Dancing Clown. But there was an incident in the movie as well, where he was trying to kill Mike Hanlon, the African-American librarian who brought everyone back for the second round against it. And John Ritter, and the late great John Ritter, and Dennis Christopher, who were there filming the scene with them, couldn't pull him off, Tim Reid. It was amazing. He got so much into the scene that they were actually injured, during the particular making of the movie. The movie itself, as a scary movie, it's very, very scary. I will say I watched it with my daughter quite recently. My daughter's, she's of a particular age now where she's curious and she hears things that her dad watches, she wants to watch them, and obviously you have to be very careful what they watch. But essentially it's a child... It's not that it's a child-friendly movie, but it's a really scary movie that kids can watch because it's not too graphic. There's I think there's very little bad language in it. No sexual scenes or any scenes of a sexual nature in it either, which is a huge difference from the book, by the way. Book is rife with with some incredibly hard-on scenes that you could never even see them make it into the reimagining of the movie It, and it was in one sense, it was a strange movie, a strange book rather, from Stephen King, because it dealt with homosexuality, it dealt with underage sex. It was pretty close to the bone at the time when the book initially came out, and it is, again, as I say, well worth a read if you do get an opportunity at some point. But to give you an idea of the character that Tim Curry plays, this is a wonderful scene, and this is like Pennywise at his most threatening when he's talking to he kind of does the same scene twice, once with the kids and once with the adults. So just take a listen. This is Tim Curry as Pennywise talking to the kids and explaining to the kids who he really is.
Resist! Let go! Beat him! afraid.
But Bev, the stones!
You all taste so much better when you're afraid.
Hurry, Bev, kill it!
Kill me? Oh, you are priceless, rat. I am eternal, child. I am the eater of worlds and of children. And you are next.
Absolutely, just it really it's full of malice, it's full of venom, and it's just you're watching it and you're kind of going, oh my God, this is terrifying. And it is. As a child, it's a really good scary movie. As an adult, if you've got a fear of clowns, definitely not a movie for you. But it's the initial kind of synopsis for the character of Pennywise the Dancing Clown is that this is one of the forms that Pennywise takes to scare children. He takes the form as well of the Wolfman, amongst many other things, because he feeds on your fear as opposed to anything else. What I would do and what I would recommend is, if you've already seen the new It, go back and watch the original version of It. And if you haven't seen the new version of It yet, which again, it's a wonderful film, very, very scary, do go back first and check out the original 3-hour version of It. It is absolutely brilliant. It's a wonderful movie. Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise is second to none, has been surpassed by nobody. So do check it out. I would heartily recommend this as a classic DVD. It always scared me. As a child when I first saw it, as a kind of early teenager when I first saw it, right up to watching it more recently again, twice, would you believe, it still scares you. It just does, and it has, and that's the magic of Stephen King. And as I say, we've got Gerald's Game, which is on Netflix right now, which I would recommend you go and check it out. Another wonderful novella by Stephen King. And also coming up on Netflix later on this month is going to be 1922, which is a terrifying tale, and again, well worth a watch. But that's my recommendation for you this week. I said I would eventually do it. I wasn't going to avoid it. We are talking about It from 1990. A wonderful film. Well worth a look. And as I say, if you've seen the updated version, go back and check out the original version afterwards, or alternatively, if you haven't even seen the new one yet, go back to the first one and see what you think of it. But that's it. That's my classic movie recommendation for this week. The movie It from 1990, originally a TV miniseries, put together though as a 3-hour scary movie masterpiece, and well worth a look. Next week we're going to be going forward in time a small bit, and we're going to be checking out, obviously, with Darren Aronofsky's new movie Mother, creating a bit of a controversy in the cinemas at the minute. We're going to take a look back at one of his darkest, I think without a shadow of a doubt. He's had The Wrestler, he's had Black Swan, but I think one of his most dangerous, one of his most depressing, one of his most significant movies that he's ever made. We are going to be talking about Requiem for a Dream next week, starring the wonderful Jared Leto and Jennifer Connelly, amongst many others. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. Not for the faint of heart, and certainly not a movie you want to watch if you're looking to be in good form. But that's going to be my classic movie next week, Requiem for a Dream. But for the time being, thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast. You can subscribe on YouTube, on iTunes, on Stitcher, and obviously on Buzzsprout as well. Do subscribe, and by all means email me if you'd like to email me with any suggestions. It's Stephen, Stephen @gmail.com. You can email me if you'd like to have a suggestion for a show. Would you like me to do a top 10 of anything, any particular top 10? We can certainly do that. Or if you have a classic movie that you'd like for me to take a look at, recommend. I've seen them all. I've seen thousands upon thousands upon thousands of movies. So, if you have a recommendation, I'd love to hear about it, okay? So make sure you do get in contact and make sure you do subscribe. But until next week, my film fans, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to Stephen Mack's Classic Movie Podcast, episode number 5, the movie It, and we will talk to you next week with Requiem for a Dream.
You've been listening to Stephen Mack's Classic Movie Podcast. Make sure to subscribe for more great classic movies. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Buzzsprout, and YouTube.